morning, all. This morning I need to clean up some of my black sand concentrates that I brought back from the river last trip out. And I got to thinking, it's been quite a while since I showed you how I do this. This is my normal everyday routine. So I thought, what the heck, let's grab the camera and I'll show you the process that I go through every time I come back from the hills with concentrates that need to be cleaned up. Okay, let's jump into step one. First thing I do is I take my concentrates from the river and I'll dump them out. And you want to make sure you get everything out of the bottle. Then what I do is I take the bottle and I'll go ahead and suck up all the excess water. Now the next step, we got a material all in a pan, as much water as we can gone. We need to dry this. Now there's several different ways. If it's summertime, you can simply just set this out in the sun for an hour or so and it'll be dry. Like today, I don't know if you can hear it, but the heater just came on. Today it's cold, so I'm not going outside. What I do is I put this on the stove on a really low heat and dry it that way. But one thing I want to emphasize, and I mean this is important, is if there's any mercury in here at all, or if you have any thought there might be mercury in here, do not heat it up in your house. The reason is mercury, when it gets warm, it will go into a vapor. And the vapor is very dangerous because you can take it into your body really easy. But even if you don't breathe it, it's still dangerous because what happens, that mercury will come off your material in a vapor. Once it cools, it goes back into mercury and it will settle all throughout your kitchen, and you will from that point on be picking up a little bit of mercury as you fix your food or whatever, and you'll eventually eat a good portion of it. So if there's any chance of it having mercury at all, don't do this in the house. You can put it on a heat source outside, but if you have mercury, your best bet is to put the mercury into solution with nitric acid. Get rid of it that way. That's the safest way to get rid of the mercury. And then you can gather it out of the nitric acid by just using copper. But that's, I can do a video on that whole thing. Okay, so right now, basically what we're going to do, dry this out without killing ourselves. Okay, we are nice and dry now. You'll notice that I can touch this pan. Even though it's still sitting on the heat is that low. Okay, another reason why you want to keep your heat down real low is mercury will vaporize, or well, mercury vaporizes all the time. That's why you want to keep water on it while you're storing it. But it will burn off at around 600, 670 degrees, something like that. So if your pan is cool enough that you can handle it, at least you know you're not boiling mercury off if it is in there. This is an old cake tin I've been using, God, for 20, 30 years. If you heat it up too quickly, the metal will bonk because it expands. It'll pop up and it'll throw your stuff all over. So you want to go slow, take your time. Let's head on in, go to the next step. Okay, for the next step, you're going to need some containers. You can use, I like to have at least one light colored, white colored one, and one dark colored one. You're going to need a couple, 3 different containers as you're sifting. Then the other thing you're going to need is classifying screens. I normally use a 20, a 30, and a 50. That's kind of my standard go-to. Okay, let's jump over the counter and get started sizing. Okay, the first screen we're going to run it through is your 20 mesh. Now the nozzle on your snuffer bottle is pretty small. So, you know, all the larger stuff can't get in here anyway. So your 20 mesh, basically what that will do is take any large pieces of gold you snuffed up and rocks and stuff like that, and it'll separate them out. The majority of your black sand will dump right on through. Okay, and we have a few pieces of gold here. We'll just grab our tweezers and we'll pick all these out and put them aside. Now what I do is I put a container in the pan, that way if I lose it, it doesn't go anywhere. And I'll just pick all these pieces you can out. Now I forgot to mention that it really helps if you use a dark container, because then your gold shows much better. Now what I do is I take another container. I've got everything picked out here, but you know, you could have gold here that's dirty or covered or whatever, so I don't throw anything away at this point. This will go in my end of year cleanup stuff. Okay, now we've got our gold picked out. Now the next step is to get rid of all the black sand we're not gonna mess with, black sand and gold. And for that, I use a 50 mesh screen. So we'll just dump everything in there. Okay, now you can see how much material has gone through that 50 mesh. And you can also see that there's a lot of really fine gold in here. As far as your daily take of gold when you weigh up, that really fine gold will make no difference at all. I mean, you know, maybe 0.01 or 2. So the amount of time it takes to clean that up, it's not worth it to mess with it. So what I do, goes in the end of the year bucket, and at the end of the year I will run that all through a tumbler which cleans it up, and mercury, and that way I save a lot of time by just doing the whole year's worth in just one batch. But as far as your daily total goes, that little bit won't make any difference. Now this is what stayed on top of the 50 mesh screen. You can see there's quite a few pieces of gold in here, but there's also, well, it's hard to tell. Let me switch containers. Now you can tell that there's quite a bit of black sand in with the gold. So now we got to get rid of that black sand. Okay, the first step is my trusty gold magnet. Now this has a magnet at the end of this plunger, and so you just push the plunger down and it will pick up the magnetic black sand, and then when you let the plunger up, it drops it. So what I do, pick up all your magnetic black sand, then we'll get rid of that, move things around, do it again, drop it. Now when you dump your black sand, you want to make sure you dump it into a dark container. That way you can see if any gold got picked up by the sand. If you pick it up too quickly, it will clump and it will pick up gold with it. But we're pretty good here, so we'll dump that in our bucket and move on. Okay, you can tell we still have a fair amount of black sand in here with our gold. Okay, what I'm going to do is I have a 30 mesh screen here, and we're going to see if we can pick a little more of the pieces of gold out of the black sand. Now you can see here we got quite a few pieces there. We will put that in another pan, and then we'll put our, now you can see these pieces here are large enough, we can pick those out with the tweezers. So I'm going to do that right now. Now if you have pieces that are real flat and hard to pick up, what I do is just get the end of the tweezers wet, I put a little saliva on them, and then you can just pick up, it'll stick to the tweezers, and you put it on your finger. And then after you pick them up, then you can take and just brush them off into your tray. What we're left with now is our hardest material to separate. The material that went through the 30 mesh but did not go through the 50 mesh. The pieces of gold in there are too small to pick up with tweezers, so we're going to have to use a different method. I prefer using a piece of paper. What I do is I take a piece of paper, I like blue because you can see the gold and the black sand with the blue paper. I fold it in half, just make a V. And what I'll do is I will dump your material on the upper end, take a pair of tweezers or anything that you can tap the bottom of the paper, and you're going to need a larger container. I use my 18-inch gold pan to catch material. You put this on the edge of the pan and you tap here, and when you hit the material, it will knock it up into the air and you blow, and it will blow the lighter black sand further than it'll blow the gold. So you just keep tapping it as you blow, and it'll work your black sand down into the pan, but not your gold, or at least not most of the gold. When your gold gets too close to the end, just tilt it up, bring it back to this end, and start it again. Okay, let's give it a go. Now I'll spread my material out at the upper end here. Now when you're tapping, you want to tap directly underneath where your material is, so it knocks it up into the wind. Now I can see I have a piece of gold down here, so what I'm going to do is I just pinch this in closed and then tap everything back. And then just start again. Now, after I've done it a couple of times, it will blow a lot of your light, flat pieces of black sand out. So what I do is I dump it back in the bowl, turn it up on end, and just tap it a little bit, and you'll notice a lot of that black sand will roll. And what I do is get it down to the bottom, and then just pull that out into your pan. Make sure you're not taking any gold with it. Okay, now the last little bit, what we're going to do is we're going to take a very powerful magnet and see if we can pull a little more of that black sand out, which it does, not much, but got a little bit of it. Back onto the paper. Okay, now we've got very little black sand left. So now it's easier to remove the black sand from the gold. So you put it in a light colored container. what I do is spread it around, wet your finger a little bit, and you can just pick up those pieces of black sand. Now you can see here, we've pretty much got all the black sand out. There might be a piece or two left in there. Well, that's pretty much it. And it really doesn't take that long. I timed it. I spent 40 minutes doing it, and that included the time I spent messing with the camera. So the whole process is really pretty quick, and that way you end up with just the majority of the gold you got that day, and don't worry about the super fine stuff. Worry about that at the end of the year. Okay, well, that's pretty much all I got on this one. I guess I'm gonna have to go out in the cold and rake leaves. So, hopefully, we'll be heading out, doing a little more mining. Got some plans, got a couple of spots I've been looking at. So stay tuned. I'll see you in the next video. I'm out of here. You guys have a wonderful day.